Captain Yuna Kim stared at the readings on her screen. Something was wrong. The planet below them was supposed to be dead, empty, just another cold rock floating in space. But the sensors were picking up energy signals that should not exist. "Taiho, come look at this," she called to her science officer. Dr. Taiho Park moved across the bridge of the ship Perseverance. He was a tall man who loved studying alien life. His eyes went wide when he saw the data. "These readings are impossible," he said. "This planet has been marked as lifeless for over 300 years. The year was 2387. Humans had been traveling between stars for almost 2 centuries now. They had built colonies on 23 different worlds, but they were still new compared to the other alien races in the galaxy. The galaxy was ruled by something called the hegemony. 7 different alien species worked together to control most of known space. They thought humans were too young and stupid to matter much. Humans were allowed to exist, but they had to follow the hegemony's rules." Lieutenant Jinwoo Lee looked up from his security station.
"Captain, should we investigate?"
"We're supposed to be mapping the system, not looking for mysteries." Engineer Minji Choi spun around in her chair. She was the youngest member of the crew, but she knew more about ship systems than anyone. "The energy readings are getting stronger. Whatever's down there, it's big." Yuna made her decision. "Take us down, but stay ready to leave quickly if we need to." The Perseverance dropped through the planet's thin atmosphere. The surface looked like a wasteland. Broken rocks and dust covered everything, but the energy readings were coming from underground. "There," Taiho pointed at his screen, "large structures buried under the surface. They look very old, but some parts are still working." They landed near the strongest energy source. The away team put on their environment suits and stepped outside. The air was thin but breathable. Strange crystal formations stuck out of the ground like broken teeth. Minji ran her scanner over one of the crystals. "These aren't natural. Someone made these. The technology is unlike anything I've seen before." They followed the energy readings to a crack in the ground. It was wide enough for a person to fit through. Lights flickered deep inside. "Someone is definitely down there," Jinwoo said, checking his weapon. They climbed down into the crack. The passage opened into a huge underground cave. Glowing plants covered the walls, giving off soft blue light. In the center of the cave stood buildings made of the same crystal material they had seen on the surface. "By all the stars," Taiho whispered. Movement caught their eyes. Tall, graceful figures emerged from the crystal buildings. They looked almost human, but their skin glowed with the same blue light as the plants. They had large eyes and long limbs. When they moved, tiny sparkles of light followed them like fairy dust. One of the beings stepped forward. When it spoke, the words appeared directly in their minds rather than through their ears. "We are surprised to see travelers here. We are the Villani." "Who are you?" Yuna stepped forward slowly, her hands empty and visible. "I am Captain Yuna Kim. We are humans. We didn't know anyone lived here." The being's glow grew brighter. "Humans. We have heard this name in the deep memories. You are the young ones who travel the stars now. How long have you been here?" Taiho asked, his scientist mind racing with questions. "We have hidden here for 1,000 of your years, perhaps more." Time moved strangely in the deep places. More Villani appeared. There were maybe 50 of them, all glowing softly in the cave's darkness. They looked thin and tired, like people who had been hungry for too long. An older Villani approached. His glow was dimmer but steadier than the others. "I am Ristal, elder of this remnant. Come, young humans. There is much you should know if you are to understand why we hide." They followed Ristal deeper into the cave complex. The walls were covered with pictures and symbols that seemed to move in the flickering light. Long ago, the Villani were many. We had great cities among the stars. We could do things that others could not. We could touch the very fabric of space and time with our minds. Ristal gestured, and the air around his hand began to shimmer. For a moment, Yuna could see right through his fingers to the wall behind. "We called it quantum manipulation. We could bend reality in small ways. This power helped us build wonderful things. Ships that could travel between dimensions, machines that could heal any wound, cities that existed in several places at once." "What happened to your people?" Minji asked. The elder's glow flickered sadly. "The hegemony happened. When they learned of our abilities, they became afraid. They said we were too dangerous to exist. They said our power could destroy the galaxy if we chose to use it that way. Did you fight back?" Jinwoo asked. "We tried to make peace. We offered to share our knowledge to help all species grow together, but they would not listen. They declared war on us. Ship after ship came to our worlds. They destroyed our cities, killed our people. Taiho felt sick. They committed genocide. Most of us died. A few escaped to hidden places like this one. The hegemony told the galaxy that we were extinct. They made it illegal to even speak our name. As far as the rest of the universe knows, the Velani never existed. Yuna looked around at the small group of survivors. How many of you are left? Here, 53. There may be other hidden groups on other worlds, but we have no way to contact them. We survive, but we do not live. We merely exist day after day, remembering what we lost. The young Velani who had first greeted them spoke up. Elder Ristal, perhaps these humans are different. They do not seem afraid of us. Ristal studied Yuna's face carefully. Indeed, Daleth. These humans show curiosity, not fear. But what can they do? They are few, and the hegemony is mighty. Yuna felt the weight of the moment. Her discovery could change everything, but it could also put her crew and her entire species in danger. The hegemony did not like surprises, especially ones that involved their past crimes. We need to think about this carefully, she said finally. But I promise you this. We will not pretend we never found you. Humanity doesn't abandon people who need help. Ristal's glow brightened for the first time since they had met him. Perhaps there is hope after all. As they prepared to return to their ship, Yuna knew that everything had changed. The Velani were not just a scientific discovery. They were people who had suffered terribly and needed help. The question was, what would humanity do about it? The choice she made in the next few hours would determine the fate of an entire species, and possibly her own. Yuna sat in her captain's chair, staring at the communication panel. She had been thinking for 3 hours. The message to headquarters was ready to send, but her finger wouldn't press the button. Captain, Taiho said quietly. We have to report this. It's too big to keep secret. Minji looked up from her engineering station. But what if the hegemony finds out? They'll come here and finish what they started. Down in the cave, the Velani waited. Yuna had promised them an answer by morning. She looked at her crew, people she trusted with her life every day. I've made my decision, she said. We're going to protect them. I'll take full responsibility. Jinwoo frowned. Captain, that could mean trouble for all of us. Maybe even war. Then we'll face it together, Yuna replied. She pressed the button and sent the message to Admiral Heesung Jang at Colonial Defense Command. The reply came faster than expected. Admiral Jang would arrive in 4 days with a small fleet. Her message was short. What have you found, Yuna? During those 4 days, something wonderful happened. The young Velani named Daleth spent time with Minji, learning about human technology. In return, he showed her how quantum manipulation worked. It's not like using a tool, Daleth explained, holding a small piece of metal. It's like asking the universe to change its mind about something. The metal began to glow and slowly changed shape, becoming a perfect sphere. Then it turned into a cube. Then it became liquid and flowed through his fingers like water. The quantum field connects everything, he continued. Matter, energy, space, time, they're all just different faces of the same thing. We learned to speak to that deeper reality. Minji watched in amazement. Could you teach humans to do this? Perhaps. Your minds work differently than ours, but the universe is the same for everyone. Meanwhile, Taiho was learning about Velani history from the elders. What he discovered made him sick with anger. The hegemony didn't just steal your technology, he said to Ristal. They stole your entire civilization and then erased you from history. The elder nodded sadly. All the great advances the galaxy has made in the past 1,000 years, faster ships, better weapons, medical miracles, they all came from Velani science. The hegemony took our knowledge and claimed it as their own. We have to tell people the truth, Taiho said. Who would believe it, and who would dare to stand against the hegemony? When Admiral Jang arrived, she brought 3 warships and a lot of questions. She was a stern woman who had fought in border wars against space pirates. Nothing usually surprised her, but when she met the Velani, even she was shocked. Dear stars, she whispered as Daleth demonstrated his abilities. No wonder the hegemony was afraid of them. Yuna explained everything they had learned. The Admiral listened without interrupting. When the story was finished, she was quiet for a long time. You know what this means, she finally said. If we protect them, we're challenging the most powerful force in the galaxy. Yes, Admiral. But it's the right thing to do. Admiral Jang looked at the Velani survivors. They stood together, glowing softly in the cave's dim light. Despite everything they had suffered, there was still dignity in their bearing. The hegemony will demand we hand them over, the admiral said. Then we refuse, Una replied. They'll threaten us with sanctions, maybe even military action. Let them try. The admiral smiled for the first time since arriving. You know, Captain Kim, I was hoping you'd say that. But their conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from the communications officer. A hegemony diplomatic ship had just entered the system. It was requesting immediate permission to land. They know, Jinwoo said grimly. Within an hour, Counselor Veltar arrived. He was a member of the Serpentine Zephyrian race, with scales that changed color based on his mood. Right now they were the deep red of anger. Admiral Zhang, he said in his hissing voice, we understand you have discovered some old ruins here. The Hegemony Council has decided that this site requires immediate investigation for galactic security purposes. What security purposes? The Admiral asked calmly. Ancient technology can be very dangerous if not properly contained. We must ensure that nothing here threatens the peace of the galaxy. Una stepped forward. Counselor, we found nothing that threatens anyone. Veltar's scales shifted to a darker red. Captain, you are young and do not understand these matters. There are things in this galaxy that are better left buried. Like an entire species that was murdered for being different? Tejo asked angrily. The counselor's scales went completely black. I don't know what lies you think you've uncovered, but the Hegemony Council will not tolerate interference with galactic security. Admiral Zhang stood up to her full height. Counselor Veltar, this system is in human space. We'll investigate it as we see fit. That is unfortunate, the counselor replied. The Hegemony Council gives you 72 hours to allow our specialists access to this site. If you refuse, there will be consequences for your entire species. After he left, the humans and Vellani gathered to discuss their options. They didn't have many. They'll come with ships, Admiral Zhang said. Probably a lot of them. We can't fight the entire hegemony, Jinwoo pointed out. Ristal spoke up. Perhaps we should surrender ourselves. We have lived as fugitives for 1,000 years. We are tired. No, Una said firmly. That's not happening. Daleth had been working with Minji on something during the meeting. Now he approached them with excitement in his glowing eyes. Elder, show them what we've discovered, he said. Minji held up a small device. We've been combining human technology with Vellani quantum manipulation. Look what happens when we apply it to our ship's engines. She activated the device. Suddenly, the Perseverance began to flicker like a ghost. Parts of it seemed to fade in and out of existence. We can make ships partly exist in quantum space, Minji explained excitedly. They become almost impossible to target with normal weapons. Admiral Zhang stared at the flickering ship. How many vessels can we modify? With the right materials and enough Vellani help, maybe all of them, Minji replied. For the first time since the counselor's visit, Una felt hope. Then we make our stand here. If the hegemony wants a fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget. But even as they began preparations, everyone knew the odds were terrible. The hegemony had thousands of ships. Humanity had barely 30 vessels in the entire system. Still, as Una watched humans and Vellani working together to modify their ships, she felt something she had never experienced before. This wasn't just about protecting one species from another. This was about standing up to bullies who had ruled the galaxy through fear for too long. The message went out to every human colony. We need volunteers. The odds are bad, but the cause is worth it. Ships began arriving from across human space. Not many. Humans were still a small species, but enough to show that sometimes courage mattered more than numbers. The countdown had begun. In 60 hours, the hegemony would return with overwhelming force. But for the first time in 1,000 years, the Vellani were not alone, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what they were really made of. The hegemony fleet arrived exactly on time. 200 ships dropped out of hyperspace like angry wasps. They formed a perfect battle formation around the planet. Their weapons pointed down at the human defenders. Admiral Zhang counted her own forces. 31 ships. Most of them were small patrol vessels and cargo haulers that had been fitted with weapons. Against the hegemony's massive warships, they looked like toys. This is Fleet Commander Thaxmore of the Hegemony Defense Force, a voice crackled over the communication system. The speaker was a member of the insect-like Krillian race. His words clicked and buzzed through the translator. You will immediately surrender all illegal aliens and their technology. Admiral Zhang opened a channel to respond. This is Admiral Heesung Jang of the Human Colonial Defense Force. We reject your demands. These people are under our protection. Admiral, you have 31 ships. We have 200. This is not a fight you can win. Maybe not, Jang replied. But it's a fight we're going to have anyway. There was a long pause. Then Thaxmore spoke again, his voice colder than space itself. Very well. We will begin a complete blockade of this system. No ship enters or leaves. You have 24 hours to reconsider. After that, we will take what we came for, and your colonies will pay the price for your foolishness. Down on the planet, Colonel Sungjin Nam was preparing the ground defenses. He was a tough Marine who had fought pirates on the frontier for 15 years. He had never faced anything like this. How long can we hold? He asked Minji as she worked on the last batch of quantum-enhanced weapons. If the Villani help us, maybe long enough, she replied. Her hands were shaking with exhaustion. She had been working for 3 days straight, modifying every piece of equipment they had. The breakthrough had come when Dr. Soman Kang arrived on the last transport before the blockade. She was humanity's best quantum physicist, and when she saw what Minji and Daleth had accomplished, she nearly fainted. This is impossible, she whispered, watching a rifle phase in and out of normal space. You've created stable quantum fields with portable equipment. The Villani have been doing this for thousands of years, Minji explained. We just had to learn their language. But the real surprise came when they tested the modified ships. Lieutenant Jin Woo Lee was piloting the first quantum-enhanced fighter when the hegemony tried to scan it. They can't get a lock on me, he reported, his voice full of amazement. Their targeting systems can't even see me half the time. The fighter flickered like a ghost as it moved through space. When hegemony patrol ships tried to intercept it, their weapons passed right through it. It's like I'm only partly here, Jinwoo continued. I can choose when to be solid and when to be quantum fog. Admiral Jang watched the test run with growing excitement. How many ships have been modified? 15 so far, Minji reported. We're working on the rest, but we need more time. Time was something they didn't have. As the 24-hour deadline approached, hegemony ships began moving into attack positions. Admiral, Commander Thaxmore's voice came over the communications again. This is your final warning. Surrender the illegal aliens now, or we will take them by force. Go to hell, Admiral Jang replied. The first hegemony attack came at dawn. 50 ships moved toward the planet, their weapons charging. They expected easy victory against the primitive human defenses. They were wrong. The quantum-enhanced human ships hit them like ghosts in the night. Jinwoo led the attack, his fighter appearing and disappearing around the massive hegemony vessels. Their weapons couldn't track him. Their shields couldn't stop him when he decided to become solid just long enough to fire. What is this? Thaxmore's voice crackled with confusion and anger. What technology are they using? 3 hegemony ships exploded in the first minute of combat. 2 more were crippled by attacks they couldn't defend against. The rest retreated in confusion. But the humans had problems too. The quantum modifications used enormous amounts of power. After 15 minutes of combat, half their enhanced ships had to return to base to recharge. We can hit them hard and fast, Jinwoo reported as he landed. But we can't keep it up for long. The hegemony quickly adapted. If they couldn't target the quantum ships, they would target everything else. Massive bombardment began falling on the planet's surface. The crystal caves where the Villani lived shook with each impact. They're trying to bury us alive, Colonel Nam reported as another explosion rocked the underground complex. The Villani were not helpless, though. Working together, groups of them began creating quantum shields around the most important areas. The bombardment still fell, but it passed harmlessly through the shielded zones like rain through a ghost. Impossible, Thaxmore raged. What are these creatures? But his anger turned to fear when the next human attack began. This time, it wasn't just the ships that had been quantum enhanced. The humans had modified their weapons, their armor, even their soldiers. A squad of Marines led by Colonel Nam attacked a hegemony landing force. The aliens found themselves fighting enemies who could walk through walls, appear behind them without warning, and disappear when they tried to fight back. Fall back, the hegemony ground commander ordered. These humans are using forbidden technology. For 3 days, the battle raged. The humans couldn't win, but they couldn't lose either. Every time the hegemony thought they had found a way to defeat the quantum technology, the humans found a new way to use it. Dr. Soman Kang worked with Velani scientists to push the technology even further. Soon, they had quantum mines that existed in several dimensions at once, making them impossible to detect until they exploded. They built communication systems that could send messages through quantum space, making their signals impossible to intercept. But on the fourth day, everything changed. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, his face pale with fear. "We're receiving a message from the Hegemony Council itself." The image that appeared on screen was terrifying. Supreme Overlord Zethkarn was the leader of the Hegemony, a being so ancient and powerful that most species considered him almost godlike. His form was hidden in shadows, but his voice carried the weight of 1,000 years of absolute authority. "Humans," he said, and the word dripped with contempt. "You play with technology you do not understand. You harbor criminals who threaten the stability of the galaxy. This ends now." "We're listening," Admiral Jang replied, though her voice shook slightly. "We offer you one final choice. Surrender the Velani and all their technology to us immediately. In return, we will allow your species to continue existing. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why the Hegemony has ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years. The transmission ended. For a moment, the command center was silent. Then Una spoke up. "Admiral, we can't give up now. Not after everything we've learned." "What we've learned might get our entire species destroyed," Admiral Jang replied. But Dr. Teho Park had been studying the Velani archives during the battle. Now he stood up with excitement in his eyes. "Admiral, I think I know why the Hegemony is so desperate to stop us. It's not just about the Velani being alive. It's about what people will discover when they learn the truth." He activated a holographic display showing ancient Velani records. Every piece of technology the Hegemony uses, their ships, their weapons, their medical equipment, all of it was stolen from the Velani. The Hegemony isn't an advanced civilization. They're just very successful thieves. The room erupted in shocked whispers. If this was true, it changed everything. "We need to tell the galaxy," Una said. "How?" Admiral Jang asked. "We're blockaded. Even if we could send a message, who would believe us?" But Daleth had been listening quietly. Now he stepped forward, his glow brighter than anyone had ever seen it. "There is a way," he said, "but it will require going to the ancient homeworld. And it will be very dangerous." Admiral Jang looked at the young Velani. "What's on the homeworld?" "The truth," Daleth replied, "and perhaps the power to set it free." The ancient Velani homeworld was a place of legends. Even the Hegemony believed it had been destroyed long ago. But Reestel knew the truth. It was hidden, not destroyed, wrapped in quantum fields that made it invisible to most sensors. "The journey is dangerous," the Elder warned as they prepared the fastest ships. "The homeworld exists between dimensions now. One mistake and we could be lost forever." President Wu Jin-song had arrived on the last transport before the Hegemony's final ultimatum. He was the leader of all human colonies, a man who usually preferred diplomacy to war, but when he saw the evidence of Hegemony crimes, his face grew hard as stone. "If we're going to do this, we need to do it right," he said. "The whole galaxy needs to know the truth." Dr. Teho Park had made the most important discovery while studying the Velani archives. Deep in the crystal databases, he found records of something called Kirana, an artificial intelligence that had survived since before the Great War. Kirana was the keeper of all Velani knowledge, he explained to the assembled leaders. If anyone knows how to prove the truth about Hegemony technology, it would be this AI. The plan was desperate but simple. A small team would take the modified ship Perseverance to the hidden homeworld, while the rest of the human fleet held off the Hegemony. They would find Kirana, gather the evidence they needed, and broadcast it to every world in the galaxy. "The quantum communication array will need enormous power," Dr. Soman Kang warned. "We're talking about sending a signal that can reach every inhabited system simultaneously." "Can it be done?" President Song asked. "Maybe, but only if we can tap into the homeworld's power systems." Una would lead the mission team. Along with her would go Teho Daleth and a small crew of volunteers. Everyone knew they might not come back. "If we fail," President Song told them before they left, "at least we'll have tried to do the right thing." The journey to the homeworld took 18 hours through quantum space. Reality twisted around them as they traveled between dimensions. Several times crew members reported seeing things that couldn't exist, their own reflections moving independently, corridors that led back to themselves, voices speaking in languages that hadn't been heard for 1,000 years. The barriers between what is real and what is possible are very thin here, Daleth explained as Minji stared at a wall that sometimes showed the interior of the ship and sometimes showed vast empty space. This is why the homeworld is safe. Most beings cannot find their way here without going insane. When they finally arrived, the sight took their breath away. The homeworld was beautiful beyond description. Cities of living crystal grew like flowers across the surface. Rivers of liquid light flowed between buildings that seemed to sing in harmonious tones. The sky showed not one sun but dozens, each a different color, creating rainbows that danced across the clouds. But something was wrong. The cities were empty. No Vellani moved through the glowing streets. "Where is everyone?" Una asked. Daleth's glow flickered sadly. "In stasis. When the hegemony came, those who could not escape chose to sleep until it was safe to wake again." They landed near the largest crystal spire in the central city. As they approached it, the building seemed to recognize Daleth's presence. Doorways opened without being touched. Lights began to glow brighter. Deep inside the spire, they found Kir'ana. The artificial intelligence was not a machine in the human sense. It was a field of pure quantum energy contained within a lattice of living crystal. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Welcome, children of both Earth and Veltar. I have been waiting for you. You know why we're here?" Taiho asked. "I know many things. I know that the hegemony builds their empire on lies. I know that the time has come for truth to be revealed. And I know that doing so will require great sacrifice." Kir'ana showed them the evidence they needed, not just documents or recordings, but actual quantum impressions of historical events. They could see hegemony ships attacking Vellani colonies. They could watch hegemony scientists studying stolen Vellani technology. They could witness the deliberate erasure of an entire civilization from galactic history. "This is more than enough," President Song said over the communication link. "With this evidence, no one can deny what the hegemony has done." But as they prepared to broadcast the truth, alarms began ringing throughout the Crystal City. "The hegemony has found us," Kir'ana announced. "A massive fleet approaches. They mean to destroy this world and everything on it." Through the spire's transparent walls, they could see ships dropping out of hyperspace. Not hundreds this time, but thousands. The Supreme Overlord himself had come to finish what his ancestors started. "How long do we have?" Una asked. "Perhaps 1 hour before their planet-killing weapons are in range," Kir'ana replied. It wasn't enough time. The quantum transmission array needed at least 3 hours to charge and send the signal to every world in the galaxy. "There might be another way," Kir'ana said slowly. "But it requires awakening the others." "What others?" Daleth asked. "Those who sleep in the crystal chambers. The last scientists, artists, and quantum architects of our people. With their help, we could create a transmission powerful enough to reach every corner of the galaxy instantly." "Then wake them up," Una said. "The process is dangerous. Some may not survive, and once awakened, they cannot return to stasis. If we fail here, our entire species dies with this world." Daleth didn't hesitate. "Wake them. It's time for the Vellani to stop hiding." Throughout the Crystal City, stasis chambers began to open. Vellani, who had slept for centuries, took their first breaths in a new age. They were weak and confused, but when Kir'ana explained the situation, they understood what needed to be done. An elderly Vellani named Genhai approached the group. She had been the chief quantum architect before the war, one of the most brilliant minds of her generation. "Young ones," she said, her voice carrying the wisdom of ages. "What you ask for is possible, but the transmission will require enormous power. Someone must merge with the quantum field to provide the energy needed." "What does that mean?" Minji asked. "It means they will die," Genhai said simply. "Their consciousness will become part of the transmission itself, spreading across the galaxy with the truth." Silence fell over the group. They had found the answer, but the price was terrible. "I'll do it," Daleth said quietly. "No," Una replied immediately. "There has to be another way." "There is," Minji said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. "The quantum interface technology we've been developing. What if we share the load? Instead of one person giving everything, what if many people gave a little?" Genhai considered this. It might work, but it would require perfect synchronization between Vellani and human consciousness. One mistake and everyone involved could be lost. "How many people would we need?" President Song asked. Perhaps 50 volunteers from each species, Kirana calculated. They would survive, but they would be forever changed. Their minds would be partially quantum, existing in both normal space and the quantum field. Outside, the hegemony fleet was moving into position. Massive weapons were being charged. In 30 minutes, the bombardment would begin. I volunteer, Yuna said without hesitation. So do I, added Taiho. Count me in, Minji agreed. One by one, humans and Villani stepped forward. Not just the 50 they needed, but over 100 volunteers from both species. We do this together, Yuna said, taking Daleth's glowing hand in hers. No one faces this alone. As they began the quantum linking process, the first hegemony ships entered weapons range. The fate of the galaxy would be decided in the next few minutes, but for the first time in 1,000 years, the Villani were not facing their enemies alone. And the truth, long buried, was about to shine across the stars like a new sun. The quantum linking began just as the first hegemony bombardment struck the planet's outer atmosphere. Yuna felt her consciousness expand beyond her body, touching the minds of humans and Villani around her. For a moment she was everyone and no one, existing in a space between thoughts and reality. Hold the connection. Genhai's voice echoed through the quantum field. The transmission is building. Around the galaxy, something impossible was happening. On every inhabited world and every space station and colony ship, screens flickered to life without being turned on. Communication devices activated themselves. Even primitive radio sets crackled with an incoming signal. The message that spread across the stars was not just words or pictures. It was pure experience, quantum-encoded memory that let every being in the galaxy live through the truth of what had happened to the Villani. On the hegemony capital world, Supreme Overlord Zethkarn watched in horror as his carefully constructed lies crumbled before his eyes. Citizens who had never questioned the hegemony's authority suddenly saw their leaders for what they truly were, thieves and murderers who had built an empire on stolen innovation and genocide. Stop the transmission, he commanded his technicians. Block the signal. But there was no way to block something that existed in quantum space itself. The truth flowed through every communication network, every computer system, every consciousness capable of receiving it. On 100 worlds, rebellion began. The Slitherian colonies, who had served as hegemony laborers for centuries, suddenly understood that their primitive technology was actually based on stolen Villani science. They rose up against their overlords, the aquatic Nereids, whose medical knowledge the hegemony had claimed as their own discovery, stopped sending healing supplies to hegemony worlds, and began helping species they had been forced to ignore. Even among the hegemony's core species, some began to question everything they had been taught. Young Zephyrians turned against their elders. Krillian workers refused to build more weapons. Entire fleets defected to join the growing resistance. But the most dramatic change happened on the Villani homeworld itself. As the quantum transmission reached its peak, something extraordinary occurred. The linked consciousness of humans and Villani became a bridge between dimensions, and through that bridge flowed power beyond imagination. The sleeping Villani cities across the galaxy began to wake up. On dead worlds that had been barren for 1,000 years, crystal spires suddenly blazed with light. Villani, who had been in deep stasis in hidden colonies across the galaxy, opened their eyes for the first time in centuries. The quantum network that had once connected their entire civilization flickered back to life. It's working, Daleth whispered, his consciousness still linked with the others. We're coming home, but the hegemony was not finished. Seeing their empire crumbling around them, Supreme Overlord Zethkarn made a desperate decision. If he could not rule the galaxy, he would destroy the evidence of his crimes. Target the homeworld, he commanded his fleet. Use everything we have. Turn that planet to dust. 1,000 ships opened fire at once, planet-killing weapons that could crack worlds in half. Focus their energy on the Villani homeworld. It should have been the end of everything. Instead, something miraculous happened. The combined will of the linked humans and Villani reached out through quantum space and touched something that had been sleeping for 1,000 years. Deep in the planet's core was the original quantum matrix that the Villani had built at the height of their civilization. It was a consciousness amplifier, designed to connect every Villani mind across the galaxy in perfect harmony. Now it awakened. powered by the sacrifice and courage of two species working together. The hegemony weapons struck the planet's surface and simply stopped existing. The energy was absorbed into quantum space and redirected across the galaxy, healing the damage that had been done to Velani worlds over the centuries. But more than that, the Matrix began to undo the very foundations of hegemony power. Every piece of stolen technology simply stopped working. Hegemony ships fell out of space as their quantum drives failed. Their weapons went silent. Their communication networks collapsed. In a single moment, the most powerful empire in galactic history became helpless. Admiral Zhang watched from her command ship as the hegemony fleet around them began to drift helplessly through space. Their ships are dead in the water, her tactical officer reported in amazement. All of them. Captain Youngmin An, who had arrived with reinforcements just before the final battle, opened a communication channel to the disabled hegemony vessels. Hegemony ships. This is Captain An of the Human Defense Force. Your empire is finished. Surrender now and you will be treated fairly. One by one, hegemony commanders began to respond, some with anger, some with fear, but all with the growing realization that their 1,000-year reign of terror was over. Supreme Overlord Zethkarn himself was among the first to be captured. Without his technology, he was just an ancient being who had lived too long on the suffering of others. You don't understand, he pleaded as human marines escorted him to a detention cell. Without the hegemony, the galaxy will fall into chaos. We brought order. We brought peace. You brought slavery and genocide, Captain Yuna Kim replied. She had survived the quantum linking, though she was forever changed by the experience. Her eyes now held flecks of the same blue light that glowed in Velani's skin. Real peace begins now. The trials that followed were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. For the first time in history, there was a forum where all species could speak as equals. The evidence against the hegemony was overwhelming, broadcast across the stars for everyone to see. But the Human Velani Alliance, as it came to be known, chose justice over revenge. Hegemony leaders were sentenced to help rebuild what they had destroyed. Their species were not punished for the crimes of their rulers. Instead, they were invited to join the new galactic community as equals. 5 years later, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The Velani had returned to their place among the stars, but they were not the same species that had hidden in caves for 1,000 years. Their partnership with humanity had changed them, just as it had changed their human allies. Young Velani like Lyabeth worked alongside humans like Dr. Soman Kang to develop technologies that served all species. Quantum manipulation was no longer a secret art but a tool for healing, exploration, and creation. The former hegemony worlds were now free republics, trading and cooperating instead of conquering and enslaving. Species that had been enemies for millennia discovered they could be friends when they were not forced to compete for the approval of their overlords. And at the center of it all was the simple truth that had started everything. Sometimes the greatest strength comes not from what you can take, but from what you're willing to give. Admiral Yuna Kim, now commander of the integrated human Velani fleet, often stood on the bridge of her flagship and marveled at how much had changed. Her crew was a mixture of species from across the galaxy, all working together toward a common goal. Captain, her communications officer called out. He was a young Slitherian whose people had been slaves until 5 years ago. We're receiving a distress signal from the Outer Rim. A colony ship has broken down and needs assistance. Set course to intercept, Yuna ordered. Best speed. As the ship turned toward the distant signal, she reflected on how simple it really was. You helped people who needed help. You stood up to bullies even when they were stronger than you. You told the truth even when it was dangerous. These were not complicated ideas. But somehow, in a galaxy full of advanced civilizations, humanity and their Velani friends had been the first to really understand them. Dr. Tejo Park, now the galaxy's leading expert on interspecies cooperation, had written the final words in his history of the Velani restoration. We didn't save the Velani because they were powerful. We saved them because it was right. And in doing so, we discovered that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from what you can take, but from what you're willing to give. The forgotten alien race was forgotten no more. Their name was sung in the histories of 100 worlds, not as victims, but as teachers who had shown the galaxy a better way to live. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all.